Hello everybody, welcome to the Redmen TV and your uncensored match build-up show ahead of Liverpool taking on Spurs in the Carabao Cup Semi Final first leg tomorrow night at time of recording. 1/1.5/2 steps away from Wembley. I'm Dan Clubb, I'm joined by John Reid and Chris Coughlin for this one. Gentlemen, how are we?
Very good. Are we still in the bracket of saying Happy New Year? Is this past the point of saying Happy New Year?
I said it to Jay when he came in, so probably, yeah. But we are teetering. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Yeah, we are teetering on the edge of that not being possible anymore. But yeah, why not ultimately? It's nice to be nice, so yeah, I don't mind it. Yeah, let's dive into it then. Let's begin with Spurs, shall we? Obviously, we played them literally a few weeks ago, so we've got very first-hand experience of what they're like this season, Chris, and I don't think there was any surprises, really. They're one of the more predictable teams in so much as we know the brand of football, we know that Ange Postecoglou is pretty much all-out attack from minute one to minute whatever. So yeah, in terms of Arne Slot's planning for this one, it's relatively straightforward, I guess.
Yeah, and I think the fact Postecoglou's kept his job makes it even more straightforward. I have severely doubted at times in the last month whether he'd be in charge for this semi-final. He might not be in charge for the second leg, who knows? Yeah, but I think, as you quite rightly say, he is all-out attack. I think it's quite poor from Postecoglou at times, given the injuries they have, that he hasn't been able to adapt to situations. And that's shown from the run they're on in the league. It's crazy, of course. That 4-0 win at City seems such a long time ago when you consider the results that they've had since. I think since then, their only wins were the 5-0 at Southampton and the 4-3 in the last round against United. But in terms of teams attacking them, they are so easy to get at, in my opinion. And I know Maddison and Son didn't play at the weekend. I took that more as resting than being dropped, to be honest with you. I very much expect at least Son to come back in tomorrow night. But I'll be honest, he'll never admit this in his press conferences, but I do think Postecoglou's struggling with his football identity at the moment and kind of struggling to get a hold of what Tottenham really are at the moment. I know the injuries are playing a part of that, but as I've said, lots of other managers have had injuries and they've found ways to deal with it. And right now, I'm not seeing a way that Spurs are dealing with this situation particularly well.
Well, no, far from it. It's funny. I joked yesterday on our podcast, like, having no defenders in terms of injuries is actually, a godsend for Ange Postecoglou because he just loves attackers, ultimately. But at the same time, it's very tongue-in-cheek because, yes, he has a style and a philosophy, but that comes undone rapidly when you've got no defence, ultimately, which is where they're at right now, John. And the injuries, they've piled up and they just keep getting worse. Like, even at the weekends, they lost Dragusin at half-time. I think there was an illness, a sickness bug going around the Spurs camp, so I think he just couldn't carry on for 45 minutes. But they ended that game with essentially 4 full-backs playing across the back. And one of them's Archie Gray, who you'd argue is out of position at full-back, let alone centre-half. So it's dire, and it's not really eased up in terms of this game either. So, yeah, they are very much hamstrung. But James Maddison's actually suspended for this one, by the way, as well. He can't play. Pape Matar Sarr is also suspended. So they're even worse off than they were a few weeks ago when we played them. So it's difficult for Postecoglou, I guess, really. But whatever he does have at his disposal, he's going to go full strength for this because this is big for them.
Yeah, he needs a win, doesn't he? Like in the obvious sense, but also in the sort of wider cultural sense.
Yes,
he needs something to sort of give a bit of toffee, as much I think to the fans as to the media. Because to be honest, obviously I've heard murmurings from some Spurs fans about him, but like I think I would say probably the bulk of their fan base still seems quite happy with them, sort of the brand of football, and they're a lot more tolerant of the injuries than the other half of North London. But it's a difficult one for him, I think, because I think most of the top 6, if we're going to extend it that far, or even maybe the top 8, I think are really struggling with sort of the fixture list in terms of like being able to get on the pitch and do stuff in terms of training. And I think there's a school of thought, I think, around Postecoglou where, like, obviously you could tweak things, you would hope sort of week to week, but that it almost in some senses might be easier for him to sort of rethink what he's doing just a little bit. But I imagine he's just probably got no time. Like you mentioned sort of Archie Gray there in terms of like the youth prospects at Spurs. Like, you think it would be loads easier for him at a time like this to almost go, I'm just going to play R21s and just, like, I trust you and you're going to play in this way and blah, blah, blah. But I think it's probably much harder than it is to say that. But you know, you just need. They've got. I think the thing that's in the favour, if you like, is they've sort of got the makings of a spine, if you like. You know, it only takes Son to hit a bit of form for them to start pulling them out. You know, I know Maddison's out for this game, as you say, but in terms of like, he's a little sort of touch class, isn't he? You know, he can like produce a moment of magic, whether it's a free kick or just setting something up. They've still got Porro, who isn't really sort of your traditional centre back, but he's very much, you know, he makes things happen kind of thing. So there's the makings of a way out of it for them, I think. And obviously, when they do play attacking football, they score. I mean, for whatever the frailties they have in terms of defence and like conceding goals and not winning games, they're still scoring loads of goals.
They have a threat. They definitely have a threat. And I think, again, their way, or their attempt to get out of this mire that they're in has looked to be, we'll outscore you, which, you know, in the most simplistic of terms is kind of how football works. But that's very much his plan of attack, isn't it, Chris? So, more generally on Angie, you said it earlier on, like, there's a good chance he isn't in situ for the second leg. I tend to agree with you. If they're 12th right now, like, you use the top 6 thing, and that's right, by the way, because that's kind of the 12th. And since we played them in our 6-3 mad game a few weeks ago, they've been beaten by Forest. They drew with Wolves at the time, a very lowly Wolves. They've had a little mini resurgence, and obviously beaten by Newcastle the weekend. So, yeah, all is not well, Chris.
No, I just want to pick up on a point John said about the schedule and like the training as such. Ruben Amorim made a point after the defeat against Newcastle that he'd only had 4 training sessions with United. So in the build-up to Sunday, they'd comparatively had more time together, realistically, hadn't they? And I do think in a way you kind of saw that, in a way that United had a freer week, so he could kind of put a bit of his style on it. I still expected United to be more up for it than they had been in previous games anyway, but you saw that. For Postecoglou, I didn't really think about this before you said it. He probably doesn't really have time to implement something different, really. Even if he is slightly thinking, I could be a bit more defensive here, could be a bit more solid here. What time does he have to really kind of implement that? And literally, because of the suspensions that you've mentioned, it feels like anybody that can literally walk for Spurs is going to be thrown out there tomorrow. Son's just signed, had his contract extension triggered, so that'll be a boost for them, if you like, going into the game. But, you know, I am very much looking at it thinking, and I don't often think this a lot about the opposition, but I really do struggle to see a way that they'll contain Liverpool, because I don't think this Spurs team are capable of sitting back, because also I don't think there's the focus in there, to be honest. I don't, you know, the amount of runners Liverpool had, we saw it in the league game, right? It could have been 2 or 3 before Luis Diaz opened.
I think Salah had like 4 shots in 15 minutes. Think about it.
It was one of them where, again, I know there was the West Ham game as well, but if the West Ham and Spurs games had been 8 or 9 each, I don't think that many people could have said it wasn't deserved. So this is a very different scenario, and we can't get ahead of ourselves. But it is very much, I haven't seen the odds and all that, but I would imagine however heavy Liverpool favourites are now, I think the bookies might even make them heavier, to be honest. Because I think as well, Slot, we'll see that, you know, I think Liverpool have kind of almost fallen into these semi-finals, as they do tend to do year on year.
Absolutely.
But I think Slot, given that he won the cup with Feyenoord, I know they only have one domestic cup over there, but I think to him, trophies are trophies.
No, absolutely, yeah, and rightfully so. And I agree with you on the point we just kind of found ourselves at this point. 2 games away from Wembley a little bit, and this is the away leg of this one, John, of course, and we'll finish off on Spurs. We'll have a quick break, and then we'll sort of centralise our conversation onto the Liverpool side of this. But the importance of a trophy for Tottenham can't be overlooked, because it's been a while. Let's have it out
2008?
there. Yeah, exactly. It was Carabao Cup, it was the League Cup, as it there was then. Whatever, Carling might have been the iteration.
It was Carling,
And Postecoglou needs to deliver on a promise that he made to Spurs fans about second season they always win a trophy. That makes them dangerous. Again, this is their home tie, so if they are going to advance, they're going to want to put in a performance and get a decent result, or at least stay competitive in the game. So, again, Chris makes the point there, like, they have big hitters, they have danger men, they have the ability to score goals. So we will need to guard against that, won't we, I guess? Yeah,
I mean, in some senses, it's a bit of a free hit for them, isn't it? Because it's, you know, sort of the doom and gloom that's around them at the minute. Like, you know, you can almost treat this as a bit of a write-off as a game. You know, take it as a break from the league. I think the only downside, I guess, to them is that it's almost like a Premier League match, really, isn't it? In the sense that they're playing us. But you know, they've still got a lot of ways that they can hurt you, and I still think, you know, there's so many stories in the league this season around sort of like who's underperforming and who's overperforming that you can almost sort of, almost sort of miss sort of like the average story. And theirs, I think, is one of that. I think Son is probably slightly on the downhill of his career, I think, this season, going like what I've seen of him. But, he's very much a guy who can just go and score a goal on his own. And obviously discuss Maddison and some of the other players. But it's a team that can still hurt here. It's a team that can still do the business. And as I say, the thing that they haven't lost, going back to my original point before, is that they're still scoring goals.
The forward line's fit. It's
Exactly.
at the back. The forward line pretty much fit.
Yeah. Solanke's been a threat. Kulusevski's been really good. Yeah.
And this will reach slightly ahead, I guess, into sort of the next part of the show as well. But it also depends what team we put out. I think the Szoboszlai thing for us, as I think it was probably at the weekend as well against United, I think Szoboszlai not being there is a big miss for us in terms of I remember looking at the numbers after the 6-3, and it's like he was level with Diaz in terms of being the highest position on the pitch and stuff. And it's like he's really picked up a lot of the slack in the midfield, but also in terms of like Lincoln, playing almost as a 10, sometimes as a 9. So I think losing those legs in midfield, I think, could be a bit of a thing. So it depends what team the manager picks, because Spurs, as we've said, are so thin on the ground. He's just going to pick 11 lads who are fit essentially, or who are mostly fit. Whereas, like, I think the manager might take the chance to rotate a bit. I wouldn't be surprised. A fullback particularly, but I think he probably will look to maybe rest a few legs.
Yeah, quite possibly. We'll delve into the Liverpool team in a bit more detail in a moment. But you're right, it's Szoboszlai scored in this game, didn't he? He had a really influential game, one of his better games this season, if we're being honest, the other week.
Goal and at least one assist.
At least for Salah, I think I'm saying. Yeah, I thought he was really, really good. And again, the leg point is definitely a salient one because he offers that and then some, doesn't he? And it'd be a shame that he won't be able to start the game, but there we are. Mate, going to leave you for a minute or so, but we're going to not sort of stop working your brains. We're going to ask you a trivia question. Liverpool signed who from Spurs for 19 million in 2008? And that's too easy. So I want to know, how many goals did that person score for the Reds? See you in a minute. Hello over there, just wanted to tell you what you could win if you were in our Club Legend prize draw for January. This is a biggie. We're starting the new year off with a bang. It's this: a signed Liverpool shirt signed by Ian Callaghan, proper Liverpool royalty, the record appearance maker for the Reds. 857 appearances he made. Not all in this shirt, you'll be glad to know, but if you want to get yourself a chance of winning this, head to redmenplus.com, sign up as a Club Legend, or upgrade your existing subscription, and you might just be the lucky winner. Hello, welcome back to the Redmen TV and your Liverpool versus Spurs build-up show, but the other way around because we're away, but you know what I mean. I asked you before the break, who did Liverpool sign from Spurs in 2008 for 19 million, and how many goals did that lad score? Nigel Smith, it was indeed. Robbie Keane. Yeah, few people getting it right in terms of the goals, but I'm not going to bring it up on screen just yet because Chris told me during the break that he thought he knew the player, which he did, I can confirm, and he also thought he knew how many goals he scored. So go on.
I'm going to say 7.
Correct. 7 goals for Liverpool. And even more impressively, he scored on your birthday.
Yeah, Arsenal away, 2008, that in that grey number.
That horrendous kit ensemble that we managed to put together somehow.
I feel like I'm being nerdy enough. I feel like I can name the teams he scored against.
How do you have such in-depth Robbie Keane knowledge?
That period is ingrained in my brain. In fact, can I have a go?
Go for it, yeah.
So his first goal for the club was against PSV.
Okay.
He then scored 2 against West Brom.
Right.
The goal at Arsenal.
Yeah.
Scored 2 against Bolton at Anfield.
I remember that, yeah, go on.
And Atletico Madrid.
Well, there you go. Robbie Keane. Who knew?
The LFC History Award goes to
Robbie Keane. Of all people, he was this. I liked Robbie Keane, not for Liverpool so much. I thought he was a decent signing when we got him, to be honest with you. And I think we all anticipated he'd score a lot more than the aforementioned 7 goals. Had he have done that, Chris may not have been able to mention all the fact you can. Off the top of your head, remember all the goals a striker scored for us is slightly concerning, actually.
One thing about Keane as well. When it was away at Preston in the FA Cup third round that season, because that was just before he went back to Spurs in that January. Yeah. I'll always remember instead of shooting, he cut the ball back to Alonso, and then there was a challenge that Alonso received in the act of shooting, and it put him out for about a month.
Yes, yeah.
And that was then were like three draws in a row. I just kind of held Liverpool back, but yeah, sorry, Robbie.
No. That was enough to send him back to Spurs.
Should have shot.
Yeah, that was enough for me. Okay. Off the back of that, then let's move on to Liverpool and what this looks like for us and how we might line up and all that stuff. To begin with, Jay, I'll come to you on it, mate. I've put in the agenda here how important. Now, obviously, very, because it's a cup semi final. Chris made the point earlier. I think it would be a real feather in Arne Slot's cap to get a trophy this early in his tenure. And albeit clearly fourth on the list of priorities, you put a trophy in that trophy cabinet early doors, you're off to a brilliant start if you're not already. So yes, important. But in terms of this actual game in itself, I think Accrington Stanley at the weekend helps a lot in terms of what he's thinking in terms of his strength of team.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Like I said, like it's almost like you're treating it like an extra Premier League match, and then you think you'll probably rotate very heavily sort of at the weekend. Maybe there'll be sort of a few sort of minor tweaks, but you're not imagining sort of wholesale changes and sort of Tyler Morton starting in midfield, are you? No, it's a big game for us, I think, and I think just also in terms of the narrative around the season, in terms of the weekend, I think. I wasn't at the match at the weekend, and it was a disappointing result in terms of what happened, but certainly a lot of the feedback I've heard from other people who were there in terms of how the crowd were and stuff and things, you don't want to risk, I guess, sort of something being derailed, and obviously that's what happened when we played United season before. So we want to sort of keep on track in terms of winning and sort of the feel-good factor around the club and around the players. So I don't think it's a game particularly. I also, as well, going back to the first half in terms of the energy of Spurs, I don't think he'll be looking to make too many changes because he'll want to keep the team sort of experienced and keep legs in the team. But no, it's a really big game for us, and I think it's in some senses I'm sort of glad because I think they're probably the best team we could be playing, if you like, in terms of style and in terms of what we're good at. But they're also not a team, Spurs, in terms of like. Like if we were in the other half of the draw saying we were playing Arsenal, it would feel like there'd be a lot more sort of tension around this game and a lot more on it. Whereas I'm sort of like, I'm expecting us to do well. I'm expecting us to win. But also, if something happens or if it's a bit of a mad game, I'm sort of not. I can sort of forget about it a full time kind of thing. Whereas if it was, like I say, if it was an Arsenal, I feel like there'd be a bit more on it, or in terms of clout and stuff.
No, absolutely, yeah, and that's sort of. Stems from where both teams are at in terms of the Premier League and the title race potentially between the two of us. Forest will have something to say about that right now, obviously, but absolutely, yeah, there's a bit of needle in that Liverpool-Arsenal thing when it comes to the fan bases as well. So, yeah, but I think John's right as well in terms of getting back to winning ways feels really important from the weekend, Chris, because I don't think that in isolation will derail what we're doing. There's a lot of narratives aside from the footy pitch that could well do that at some point. But yeah, I think responding in a manner that sort of befits what we've done so far this season is massively important.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm a little bit grateful for 2 cup games because I think for some, they're still processing the raw emotion of what went on in several ways on Sunday. Of course, I know Trent, for example, everything that went on there, I think some people are still processing how they feel about that whole situation, the result itself. Even when you factor in Arsenal-Chelsea dropping points, has all of a sudden it become an okay result in the middle of all that? I can't discount Forest, of course, after their superb win at Wolves last night. But I am kind of glad that the focus has shifted somewhat. And you're right about Accrington Stanley as well, because with no disrespect to them, I think they would heavily imagine a vastly rotated team at Anfield on Saturday to face them. And ultimately, this is a semi-final. It has the right to be taken seriously. And in other circumstances, I think Slot could rotate. But I'll tell you one thing, I was really surprised at how strong overall he went at Southampton. I think there was a bit of talk about that in terms of potentially being the kids. I didn't see Gakpo starting. I didn't see Alexander-Arnold starting. I was just, McAllister, I know he'd been banned for the last few games, but even then, for him to play a reasonable amount of that game, I was still relatively surprised. Yeah. So I think in his mentality as well, his squad management has been quite good, apart from early on the season. Me and you, Dan, we've discussed our thoughts of that Forest game back in the day, back in September, when it was like, why has he changed that team? But why hasn't he changed the team? But he's learned from that, and I think this is an example where he'll get fresh bodies in. I totally agree about Szoboszlai, because I think Sunday was a case of you don't really know what you've got until it's not there, because that energy was just so needed, and the pitch was so bogged down and slow at the weekend. He would have been so important for that. But regardless, looking at the Spurs absentees and the fragilities in the defence, I would expect whatever Liverpool team gets put out to get a result. The defence will be interesting in several aspects, but also pretty much confirmed that Quansah will be in, which makes me think Van Dijk is much more likely to start, given that Konate, he's all but said, isn't going to play, and Gomez is obviously still out.
Yeah.
So I think that gives an indication that Arne Slot is still thinking there is a job to be done here.
No, absolutely. Yeah, well, let's do the team then. Obviously, we just watched some of the press conference and listened to some of the press conference upstairs before we started. As you mentioned, no Joe Gomez. Didn't even need to talk about him because we're just aware of that being a few more weeks yet. He was asked about Dom Szoboszlai. He used the word doubt about Dom. Obviously, didn't feature at all on Sunday. Illness, the reason for that. He wasn't back in the action yesterday. He was. Did he say he's expecting him today? Maybe he wasn't sure.
Yeah,
I don't think.
Yeah.
But even if I think he said something online. If I'm paraphrasing, even if he does come in today and do a little bit of training, he probably won't start tomorrow. So the chances in the squad, which is good. But what was interesting, he was sort of prodded a couple of times about a potential lineup for tomorrow. And initially he just kind of spoke generally about the health of the squad. And then the second time around, it was more specifically about Kelleher. And he said something along the lines of, we'll see tomorrow. But then he said, I think I already have my whole team. So he knows in his mind what that 11's going to be. So let's try and guess it, shall we? You know what's actually interesting? Before we do that, you was talking there and you had a quick look, because I think a lot of us have thought that he's made wholesale changes throughout this competition thus far, but he hasn't really. And I made this point yesterday because I don't think you've got to level up what he's done to get pretty much full strength. So, for instance, look at the West Ham team he named. There's Kelleher in goal, Conor Bradley, Joel Quansah, Joe Gomez, Kostas Tsimikas, Wataru Endo, Curtis Jones, Federico Chiesa, Diogo Jota, Cody Gakpo, Darwin Núñez. Now, there's obviously some big hitters not playing there. Van Dijk, Gravenberch, Salah, McAllister. But that's still the matchday squad. There's no kids.
Salah McAllister came on in that.
Exactly.
As well.
And there's zero, like I said, there's zero kids there. If you look at Brighton, I'll just quickly get theirs up now as well. Cody Gakpo was the star, obviously Luis Diaz scoring too. So similar in terms of the strength of that lineup. It's just not working for me at all, which is wonderful. Go back and try and find the Southampton, as you mentioned. There we go. There's better. That was strange. Scroll down for the Southampton team. There we go. Tyler Morton did play, but again, it was Kelleher, Trent, Quansah, Endo was that hybrid centre-half thing. Joe Gomez at left back. Morton, McAllister, Trey. Yeah, okay. Harvey Elliott, Darwin, Cody Gakpo. So again, little tweaks, nothing particularly major. So I think that plays into the thinking here, and I think it will be relatively strong once again. John, goalkeeper?
I think he might start Becker though, you know. I know there's chat around Kelleher, and I can understand that. I just think it's almost like with the weekend in mind for me. I just think I think if he was gonna, if this game was just in isolation and we were playing in the league at the weekend, I think he would start Kelleher. But I've got a sneaking suspicion he might start Alisson, given that we're playing Spurs.
I'm with you. I'm with him, and I think. Sorry, Chris. The reason I think that's right is because he could have easily just said Kelleher's going to play. He's been most open about the goalkeeper situation. When it was Kelleher whilst Alisson was injured, he was very forthright in just saying, as soon as Ali's back, he's in because you're on number one. Kelleher has been exceptional. Alisson Becker's on number one. I think he could have, 20 minutes ago, he could have said, oh no, Kelleher starts this Carabao Cup game. You know what I mean? That would have been a tap-in for him, but he didn't. So I think Alisson plays.
There's been one or two press conferences this season where he has just said straight up Kelleher, hasn't he? I'm trying to think off the top of my head, if anybody's watching and can confirm this. Alisson's last appearance in the Carabao Cup was the semi-final first leg against Arsenal in 2022, because Kelleher definitely missed that. Kelleher played the second leg of the Emirates. Alisson played the first leg.
Okay, yes, that rings a bell. Yeah.
So
the Arsenal game? Sorry.
Yeah, the Arsenal semi-final
when they went down to 10.
The 0-0 at Anfield.
Yes, yeah.
So off the top of my head, that was his last performance or his last appearance in the Carabao Cup. So that's actually very interesting. The fact that he wasn't so set on him, because in my head I was just thinking Kelleher will play both tomorrow and Saturday. Although Yaros could well play Saturday
feasibly.
as well. But off the top of my head, just because of Alisson's injury, and this is just me maybe overthinking. Back in the season against Palace, and then there was that discussion of is he overused? Is he not given as much of a break as such? But you know what, that has thrown a proper cat amongst the pigeons. That really, because I think he's much more likely to start than I thought he would be about an hour ago.
I'm with you. Absolutely. Yesterday, I just immediately said it's Kelleher, because it just felt like it was Kelleher. And now I'm really not sure. And it crossed my mind listening to before, because again, he could just said, "Oh, yeah, it's Keevan's competition." That's something Klopp used to say. Keevan competition. This is going to be his. But now I'm far from certain. So we'll go around the room quickly. You think it's Alisson?
Alisson.
And I think it's Alisson.
I've been convinced by you two that I think it's Alisson.
And I would not care necessarily either way who it was, if you told, because Kelleher's that good. But yeah, I've got a sneaky suspicion now that he's going to go with Ali. And again, I can just understand that the weekend allows Kelleher to play some football. So yeah, interesting. Defence then, let's do it. Let's start with the full-backs. We'll do it that way round, shall we? Chris, I'll come back to you, mate. The right back.
Right back. Oh, that feels like $1 million question all of a sudden, doesn't it? I don't know how fit Conor Bradley is, because he was also asked that, and he was quite vague on that.
So vague, I think he ignored it.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't think he actually said the words Conor Bradley in his answer, because he was asked about him and Diogo Jota.
Yeah, he just ignored both.
If Bradley had played more than 10 minutes on Sunday, I'd think that he was fit enough to start. Because I think, to be honest with you, I think a lot of people were clamouring for Bradley to come on a lot earlier than what he did. But that kind of makes me think about Alexander-Arnold starting this game. And again, is this? He said he's spoken to Alexander-Arnold personally, never discusses those conversations in press conferences. But does he maybe see this as a chance for Trent to get straight back out there and put his doubters away, really? And Bradley getting more of a chance for minutes against Accrington Stanley on Saturday. I am really torn on this, because in my head, I've been thinking Conor Bradley, but just on fitness purely, probably Trent Alexander-Arnold starts. At left back, I'm fully convinced on Tsimikas for tomorrow.
Same, 100%. Absolutely same, yeah. And I think it's a 60-30 thing at right back, but I think 60 is Trent, personally, for that. And a lot of people made the point about Bradley coming on earlier in that game of the weekend. My only conclusion was that he couldn't play more than he did. I know 10 minutes is so small, but he might have had 15, 20 in him, tops, and it just so happened that he played 10 in the end. That was my assessment of it all. But, John, I'll ask you the same question. We're going Trent to start and Costas left back?
Yeah, I think for all the reasons Chris has covered very well, I think I don't think he's got much choice at the minute other than to play Trent. But yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because we've gone from, for different reasons, sort of, our full-backs being almost the fulcrum of our team in recent years, to there's question marks and then cover both of them, both starting full-backs. But I think it's just a game where you just rest Robertson as best you can in terms of just keeping him ticking over. He's, obviously been a lot of chat about him, and in terms of his fitness and not getting a proper pre-season and stuff, and his age and everything else. But also, I think Tsimikas, deserves to start. He's been really solid, sort of the last 18 months of his career, and I know we were doing the build-up to the United show. Steve mentioned just how good of a crosser the ball he is as well, in terms of the front line and stuff and things like that. So, yeah, completely agree. I think Trent stays, and I think we bring Tsimikas in. Yeah, and again, I think if Bradley was more up to speed, I think he'd have happily started this game. But it's going to be fascinating to see, and Tom Rooney makes the point here, he's going to need a 9 out of 10 performance, and I tend to agree with that. He's going to want to respond to what happened the weekend. But also, when you look at the sort of the makeup of Spurs' attack, Dom Solanke is obviously a major threat, but Son has been at it. We've already alluded to that. Timo Werner, he's quick. But Kulusevski on the other side coming up against what will likely be Tsimikas, that's going to be a real battle, and you've got to want Tsimikas to prevail from that, because Kulusevski has been good. Okay then, centre halves. Happy with Quanta and Verge, both of everyone?
Yeah, it's pretty much who's available.
I think Quanta plays. Quanta plays. We know Canate played 90 minutes. He will probably not be able to go again, I can't imagine, coming back from injury. Virgil van Dijk is a talking point here. I think he wants to play this game, ultimately. It's a semi-final, it's a big game. He's the captain of the football club. Yeah, there will be a lot of people out there, I've seen it in the chat already, suggesting he should be rested and wrapped up in cotton wool for bigger things, the Premier League, of course. But yeah, I just think he plays this one, John.
Yeah, and I just think it's a game that, not to diminish Spurs in any way, but I think it's a game that doesn't really take a lot out of him, really. Like, the weird thing with Verge, I always think, is it's like, if he's playing sort of elite opposition, if he's playing sort of, big teams, I sort of don't mind how many games he plays, really, because he plays the game almost at his level, at his pace. I always worry with Verge when he plays, if we weren't playing Accrington, say we were playing like a Millwall or a low league team, we've got like lots of big lads who just like to kick it. That's almost what I fear more for Verge, because I just think like you don't need to be like going up for a header and you know he's some other fella next to him who's the same height as him trying to, you know, headbutt him kind of thing. So I can understand it, obviously, just in terms of like, you know, general fitness and sort of keeping them fresh and stuff. But I just think he plays the game in such a way that, you know, it then almost doesn't affect him really.
No, I'm with you 100%. Yeah, and I think he will start this one most definitely. Let's talk midfield department then, shall we, Chris? Let's start with Van Gravenberch, who feels like a weird place to start. But we've just said there, Virgil plays because it's a big game and it's very important, and we want to, you know, win it ultimately. Yeah. But yeah. He feels like someone needs to rest me, and I'm aware Accrington's on the horizon, so he definitely won't be involved there. He won the fort. Does he need this off as well?
He hasn't played in the Carabao Cup yet this season.
He's had them all off. I think. I don't think he's been in the squad yet.
See, in my head, on Saturday against Accrington, Endo will be at centre back alongside Quansah.
Okay.
Because of what we saw against Southampton, so we know it's definitely possible.
Mm-hmm.
I know what you mean. I thought he looked actually fresher than ever against United at times at the weekend. I thought he was one of two players in particular, McAllister being the other, that came up with the most credit from that game. It'd be very interesting if Slot looks at it and goes, right, okay, the defensive side of Spurs are a shambles, but the attack is still really good. And I think that's why he will shift back towards Gravenberch, just because of continued doubts over Endo and having not given him too much playing time. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Endo does come in, but in my mind, just to touch on the Van Dijk point, I know it's a semi-final, and I just think the club captain playing in a semi-final, it's almost a bit of a must, I think, given how important the occasion is. And I'm not really in any doubt that he does play. For Gravenberch, again, we have seen his minutes managed slightly more, obviously not massively more, but slightly more, obviously coming off very early in West Ham compared to what Slot would normally bring him off in. And in the same way, I think when you say about the game wouldn't take a lot of Van Dijk, how much do you think it would really take out of Gravenberch, especially with no Sarr as well? Basuma, I'm expecting Basuma to come back in. He was benched again at the weekend.
I think Bergvall will be in that midfield.
And Bergvall, he played very deep for what he actually is, because he's much more of a forward-thinking player. I think Gravenberch could easily kind of rule the midfield, really, and I don't know how much it really would take out of him.
No, it's interesting that particular position is really interesting. I think if you move further forward, it's a slightly easier conversation. But Brett Young here says Grav better not play for the next two games or Slot is stupid, because I get that as well. I understand.
I just love watching him.
Yeah, I said why, and I want to see Liverpool win the game of footy ultimately, and Gravenberch being the side aids that cause. But I also understand people who are like, protect him at all costs because he's so important to it. And if let's say it's Wataru Endo is perfectly able to play in this game. Let's have that conversation now, Jay, shall we? Like, he could just play this game and we could win this game and we all move on with our lives. Gravenberch's got more of a rest in the tank. He probably won't play at the weekend either. And then we got Gravenberch really, really fresh. So happy days ultimately. And again, to come back to the central point, Wataru Endo is perfectly capable.
No, he is, and I think the sort of, for me, it was sort of the game against Southampton where I sort of thought the manager seems to understand a bit more what he's capable of, or almost sort of, I don't want to say what his limitations are, but I had a sort of sense throughout the start of the season that the manager didn't really want to play Endo just because he thought he was limited in some ways. And that seems to almost have succeeded a little bit. He seems a bit more comfortable putting him out now, and whether that's he's more used to him as a player, whether they've spoke to him and they've tweeted a few things in his game kind of thing, you're not sure. I think the midfield for me is the most interesting thing at the minute in the team, because I think it's, for as much as it feels like we've got wealth there in terms of number of players and stuff and freshness, it's also the part of the team where I'm never quite sure where one lad comes out, what happens, because it's almost like three lads sharing the positions. So like, I think this would be a really interesting game, say, to maybe try Jones at the 6. But then obviously he's at the weekend where he didn't really play particularly well, and obviously, as you say, you've got Endo there, so do you go with sort of the safe pair of hands and you're looking to keep Jones further forward, or do you say, well, no, we're going to try this because we haven't really got the cover for Gravenberch that we feel comfortable can play the role the way Gravenberch plays it. But then if you do that, if you go further forward, well, you can't play Szoboszlai, so you're down one straight away, so you you imagine he might play Harvey Elliott.
Yeah.
But then who's he playing next to him? Is he playing McAllister or is he playing Jones? Do you know what I mean?
It's not easy. And on the Jones point, I don't think Jones comes into the equation here, and he's a perfectly valid person to bring up because he plays football for Liverpool. But I think on the evidence of the weekend, I think he probably is one that needs the rest ultimately. And yeah, Szoboszlai is a spanner in the works here, isn't he? If he was available, it's Elliott and Szoboszlai, and then you can pick the one that plays deeper. I think that's a fair point to make. But yeah, him not being there complicates matters. Let's try and pick one.
Morton is one to throw in there as well.
Absolutely.
Because his starts this season have come in this competition. Yeah. Would it be a bit too rogue to go in, and when I say rogue with Harvey Elliott in this conversation, I absolutely love Harvey Elliott. Is it a bit too out there to go and Endo, Morton, Elliott midfield 3?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think it is. And I like all the players individually. I do. I like all the players individually. But I think...
because it'd be purely a new 3 that I'd never
completely new, together. Zero chemistry between the 3 of them in terms of that working as a trio. More importantly, there's a real lack of football there.
Yeah,
there's a real lack of football there in all of the legs. You know what I mean? Like Tyler Morton played a handful of games this season, full stop. Likewise, Harvey Elliott. Likewise with Endo. Like there's just not enough minutes in those legs. And there's also a lack of physicality as well. With all due respect,
it's a small midfield.
Yeah, it is. And without means to put too fine a point on it, it is. Like, and they're all good players. They're all capable of battling and winning duels. But I think collectively, there's a chance that gets overran potentially as well, which isn't good. Yeah. And again, I like them all, but I don't see the combination.
To go back, I guess, sort of to your original point, I think it's probably more a conversation around sort of Endo and Gravenberch, because I do think the other positions will probably be Mark and Elliott, and it's more just who he's playing there. But again, to go back to Chris's point, I don't think that Endo won't play at the weekend against Accrington. So, and I could easily see him playing in midfield in this game and playing the centre half at the weekend. But
yeah, quite possibly. For what it's worth, this is jumping ahead massively. I think Marvin Nallo might play the weekend, centre half from the young lads. I think it's a game for him. He's been in and around the first team squad a few times. I think they might do something there, but that's a conversation for another day. Let's try and pick a midfield. I'm with you, Elliott McAllister. Absolutely.
I think he'll probably start Gravenberch.
Yeah.
I am edging more towards Gravenberch playing.
No Endo.
Yeah, and honestly, that Endo's performance at Wembley was absolutely immense. I know that's just one performance because there were several brilliant ones last year. I just wonder, just because I know at times how bullish Slot is with rotation, but Endo, I can totally understand it. In a similar kind of way, I was wondering if Alexander Arnold would get the next 2 games off before Forest, but then that's a week without playing. So would he give Gravenberch a full week off without playing before going straight back into the team of a third in the Premier League? You know,
Mataru, I stuck up for you, my mate. I've been outvoted.
We did as well. But
you were very complimentary about him, but didn't pick him. Okay, Gravenberch, McAllister, and listen, I'm fine with that. I like Gravenberch a lot. I just had this been the other way round. Bear with me here. I'm thinking this out as I say it. Had this have been Accrington Stanley tomorrow and Spurs at the weekend, and this had been flip reversed, I would have gone Gravenberch at the weekend for the Spurs game. That makes sense. Because he'd have had his rest now. I think I wanted to get him a rest now, and if that just so happens that it means he gets 2 games rest, kind of so be it. And he can be on the bench, you know what I mean? I'm not expecting him to go out with his missus like he did last time. I won't put him through that fresh hell again. But yeah, okay, all right, sad. Let's do the attacking line then, shall we? Slightly interesting conversations here to be had. Somebody earlier on mentioned Federico Chiesa. I had to look him up. I wasn't sure who he was talking about.
Dan's on fire today.
Sorry. I listen.
Nobody's safe today.
I like him a lot. Just hope he can play football for us. Let's do it. John, I'll come to you on it, mate. Let's start with the right wing, because similar to the Van Dijk conversation we had earlier on, kind of similar to the Gravenberch conversation we had a moment ago, there's a Mo Salah conversation to be had here. For what it's worth, don't want to jump the gun on this, he will be desperate to play this game.
Yeah, 100%. He's made it almost like his MO, hasn't he? That he's all about records, and I think it's more interesting actually that when you watch interviews with him, that's almost what you get more out of him from. He's humble about it, or he tries to be sort of humble about it. But he's much more happy talking about sort of breaking sort of appearance records and trying to catch Ian Rush than he is sort of talking about his contract and other stuff. And his ambitions obviously sort of to win the league and stuff. No, I think it's a really interesting point, because I think it's a game I would love to see Chiesa play. It's a game I would, just because I think the little glimpses you've seen of him, he's looked good and he's looked promising. And obviously, he's got a whole sort of back catalogue in history when he's played for Italy and when he's played in Italy, where we've seen lots of great things. I just wonder, again, as you say, sort of whether it's, I don't want to say a game too soon for him because we're halfway through a season. I know he's had fitness problems, but like it's almost like too big of a game to just drop him into. And as you say, I just think Salah's in such imperious form. I think Salah's going to start, and I think he'll probably play most of the 90. But even then, if he doesn't, Salah's going to play in this game. Whether it's 90, whether it's 60 minutes, 70 minutes, or whether it's 30 minutes in the second half, he's going to play. So.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've got this down as Salah starting personally, but Chiesa minutes, is in like another 60-30 type split in Chiesa, because we haven't seen Chiesa for a good few weeks now. And it was the Brighton game he came on?
It was the
Southampton. Of course it was, sorry, yeah.
When he got a lot of criticism, but I was there, and I thought he seemed quite sharp at times. I know there was one where he should have had a shot, but I didn't think he was nearly as bad as what people said.
He's quite unfortunate not to score in many ways. Only one got sort of deflected and over the bar late on. But yeah, I thought he grew into it. I think I'd probably say on it. But yeah, he needs to get on a pitch as opposed to anything like 90 minutes. I think he gets 30 in this case and then maybe even starting against Accrington, which is mad because Federico Chiesa might start against Accrington Stanley. Again, with all due respect to Accrington Stanley, this is not how Chiesa envisaged his move to Liverpool panning out. No. I don't think, obviously. But starting games against Accrington was not in the plan. But yeah, we've got Salah in them. Wow, let's do the other two, Chris.
He missed the semi-final and final last year as well, of course.
Yeah.
So he'll be wanting to make.
Oh yeah, he'll want to play this game without a shadow of a doubt. The other two, what do you think?
Jota.
Yeah.
Jota. Is it again with Nunez? I think he's nailed on to start on Saturday, and I think people can have their opinions about that, of course. But he's banned for Forest. I think that's So he's nailed on to start on Saturday. I think. I'm just not sure. I almost feel like he knows he's gone next summer. In terms of when he came on Sunday, honestly, I thought it's just purely headless chicken. And then apart from that one at the end where he nearly set up Jota for the winner, I just didn't really feel like he got involved in the game. But I think this is a prime opportunity for Jota to start. And then Gakpo just loves this competition. And again, in a similar way to Salah, he's in that good a streak at the moment. Just try telling him he's not going to start. Yeah,
I'm with you. The only argument and counterpoint I'll make to the Gakpo one, and I'm on board with it, by the way, is that Diaz came off first on Sunday. Yeah. So do you think there's a chance it's Diaz over him?
Well, Diaz scored twice a couple of weeks ago, didn't he? So
I don't know. I think my only concern, with like sort of a Gakpo Jota sort of axis, if you like, is that I just think they're very similar in a weird way, in whatever sense that makes sense in my brain. But like, you know what I mean? Like, they're not particularly explosive. They're not particularly touchline hugging players, if you like, although Jota can play quite well as a winger. But do you know what I mean? Like, they're not sort of lads who sort of stretch the pitch. They're lads who are good with the ball at the feet, good at dribbling. So I just wonder whether maybe Diaz is more of a, in terms of keeping the pitch big and stuff, and trying to play between the lines in terms of spares and getting past lads, whether that just gives them slightly more trouble. But equally, Gakpo, as you say, in a brilliant vein of form, and also he's really good with the ball at his feet. So in a team that's struggling at the back, putting him and Jota next to each other is not the worst idea in the world. So I could see either, but I don't know. I think I've got a sneaking suspicion it might just be Diaz, I think.
Okay, interesting. I will go with Gakpo. I've put him here. I will go with Gakpo, and I think Jota is the 9. One of the problems with Nunez in this front three is that there's nobody you want to see out on the left, really. Is kind of, because I think Jota's done it, Nunez has done it. I don't think either of them, that's the ideal solution, personally. And I think we're more inclined to want to get Jota up to speed as soon as possible, as opposed to Darwin's minute, personally. A lot of people mentioned Jayden Danns in the comments as well. I think the weekend might be one for Jayden Danns, personally. And again, that's the beauty of having Accrington this weekend. So we have picked an 11, ladies and gentlemen, would you believe, after all that? We've got Alisson Becker in goal, Trent, Jarell Quansah, Virgil, Costas, Gravenberch, Alexis McAllister, Harvey Elliott, Mo Salah, Diogo Jota, Cody Gakpo. That's right, you heard it here first. Okay, start thinking about score predictions. You at home, you two as well. And whilst you do that, let's got to quickly discuss the fact that it's Newcastle against Arsenal later on in the other semi-final. Good lineup of semi-finals, full stop, really. Yeah, Chris, is it foolish of me just to say who do you fancy out of them two?
Newcastle.
Yeah.
Because no European football. Eddie Howe will be so desperate to win this tournament, to get a trophy for Newcastle. There's no reason for them whatsoever not to go full strength in both of these games.
I'm with you.
Arsenal, when Airie's out for a couple of weeks as well, the only thing is with them, in terms of the back, Raya has to play because Neto's cup tied, played the first tie for Bournemouth. I think Arteta as well, because let's whisper this quietly, in terms of trophies, one FA Cup since he joined the club does need to be highlighted a little bit more than it is doing in the media, in my opinion.
Well, you are the media, Chris.
I am the media, to be fair. That does need to be highlighted, and I think this semi-final is a bit bigger for Arsenal than I think a lot of people might point out, really. But I really, Isak as well. He's just my favourite striker in the Premier League at the moment. It wouldn't surprise me if Newcastle won both legs. It really wouldn't.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
But I am backing Newcastle over the two legs.
Yeah, likewise. And you said it there, Newcastle, desperate. Need is a word. It's probably the right word. But desire to win a trophy is probably more appropriate. Like, how much does a football club need a trophy? You could argue, because, the football club exists regardless. But they really want a trophy. The fans really want a trophy. It's been a long time, like longer than Spurs. And it's interesting how Arsenal fall into that category as well. Less so than Spurs and Newcastle. And obviously we don't really. Good. Doesn't mean we don't want to win it, by the way. But it is true. But I think Newcastle need it more than anyone. Then Spurs, then Arsenal, then us. So I think you're right. I think Newcastle will go all out to win it. And I'll bring you on it, mate. But I think they will as well.
I think they could do, yeah. They almost need it, not just on sort of like the level that we're discussing in terms of like, the time, but also I think just in terms of the project, in terms of how being able to say, right, because I don't know enough about Newcastle in terms of like the ins and outs, obviously, of all the finances and stuff, but from what I gather from speaking to people who are Newcastle fans, they're probably going to have to break some of this team up in terms of PSR and stuff to sort of get the next lot of lads in who they need to sort of take it one step further. It looks like, they're certainly in the running for European football of some description next season, whether it's the Champions League or a bit lower, but so they're going to need a bigger squad because that really did for them, I think, sort of last season in terms of trying to balance that. So this almost like first iteration of the Howe project at Newcastle, if you like, needs that thing. And I think for him as a manager to sort of take that team where he's taken it in like the last 3 or 4 years, to end it with like the first trophy they've had for however long would sort of be the sort of crown and achievement. But equally, I completely agree with Chris, and I've been saying it for a while myself. For however good and still the waters seem to be, I think, at Arsenal, I don't think it takes much by the end of this season for them to sort of be questioning Arteta and sort of cat amongst the pigeons, and also to sort of, and this is a clause, a theory I've been working on for a while, but I'm still sort of doing the research. I'm not entirely sure that Edu and all the sort of plaudits that they've had around sort of their recruitment's as good as it can be, because I still think there's a lot of lads that they're going to churn in the summer in terms of getting rid of. So they're a team who almost need something, I think, because I think this season really makes me think of the year Leicester won the league, where it's like they came out of nowhere and it was almost like, only in hindsight, so I think it was us, but particularly Arsenal, look back and we're like, that should have been our year. Yeah, we should have done that. And I feel a bit like no one saw what was going to happen to City this year. And to suddenly see how Arsenal have been, and I know there's been injuries and whatever, but I think there's a sense of that within them, that like we should have done something this year, and the League Cup, it's being a semi and be so close, and on their best day they should beat Newcastle, but as you say, especially with Isak up front, it's such a tantalising game.
No, it is, yeah. I'm really interested by it. Yeah, I think Arsenal, you touched upon it there, I think if Arsenal go trophyless this season, all of a sudden that spotlight does turn on Arteta a little bit. Like, we spent a decent chunk of money, I agree. I don't think we spent it particularly wisely, but the money's been spent, and they've been in and around the conversation, certainly for the Premier League for a while, and they got nothing to show for this. And you're absolutely spot on as well, because we'd made the joke a lot early on in the season, like, as champions elect Arsenal, because it should be. They should be top. If City have a drop off, it should have been Arsenal waiting to pick up the pieces. It isn't.
In all the seasons that Liverpool have so narrowly missed out, draws have been the issue. Yes. And we checked the table yesterday, I think 7 draws for Arsenal in 20 games.
Yeah.
That does tell you where the issues are, really.
And the issues are they don't have open play goals or enough of them. Certainly not.
And they also time wasting the first half.
Yeah, Mikel Arteta.
You have to get carded at it because they're so good for it.
Mikel Arteta, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, score predictions then, shall we? But a few come in the chat. I brought them up as we went along, but I will start with you, Chris. What are we thinking?
I'll go Tottenham 1, Liverpool 3. Slightly less chaotic, but I do very much fancy at least a 2-goal cushion going back to Anfield.
Don't mind that.
I'm going to say 3-2 Liverpool. I think it'll be Barmy again.
Just a 1-goal cushion. I'll say 3-2 Liverpool as well. I said that somewhere else, so I'm going to stick to that. I don't want to make a lie about myself.
Dan said.
Dan
said this.
I'm going to stick to that. And I'll go... I always do goal scorers, by the way, so bear with me momentarily. I'll go Salah. Let's go with the whole front three. Salah, Jota. Gakpo in my mind.
You got to back that.
Yeah?
You got to back that.
I will do, yes. Why not? Why not? Wonderful. Sounds. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Much appreciated. Come back. Join us for Deep Dive later on this afternoon for those watching live. If not, go and check that out instead. We will be back live, of course, for your match day experience. It's not called that. I've just made it up. But there we go. It'll be Chris, Paul and Steve, the main trio in some of your eyes. They will be together tomorrow night watching Liverpool take on Spurs all night long. Thanks again for getting involved. Thanks again for watching or listening. Take care. I'll see you.